Greetings. I'm Rosalind Parks, and thank you for tuning in to this edition of National Network View News. This week's Final Call newspaper published an article by Brother Brian E. Muhammad entitled U.S. Hypocrisy and War in Western Sahara Could Ignite North Africa. Watch this clip from France 24 to English.
A former Spanish colony, Western Sahara was annexed by Morocco in 1975. The move was met with fierce resistance from the Polisario Front, a local armed group that called for the region's independence. Clashes between the two sides saw Rabat build a massive defensive wall in the 1980s, effectively dividing the region. A UN-brokered truce backed by a peacekeeping mission came into effect in 1991. The United Nations also called for a referendum on the territory's future. The idea was rejected by Morocco, which offered instead to grant autonomy to the region while keeping it under its control. Negotiations then stalled, with Rabat repeatedly accusing the UN of being pro-Polisario. Last year, after an incident near the border crossing between Western Sahara and Mauritania, the Polisario declared a resumption of its armed struggle against Morocco. But Rabat says it continues to uphold the 1990 ceasefire and only engages in military action in response to attacks. In December 2020, former US President Donald Trump broke with long-held diplomatic norms to recognize Morocco's claim to the territory.
Joining us is NV Global View contributor and Final Call news staff writer Brian E. Muhammad. Greetings, sir.
Greetings, Sister Rosalind.
Yes, sir. This Final Call news article that you wrote detailed a webinar discussion on the freedom struggle for Western Sahara, United Nations mission for the referendum in Western Sahara. Worried experts discussed the increased violence between the Sahrawi Arab Democratic Republic freedom fighters and Morocco, which has occupied the country for decades. Brother Brian, what else can you tell us about the history of this problem?
Well, the problem goes back to 1975. You know, the Western Sahara was once colonized by Spain. And when Spain left there, rather than allowing the people of the Western Sahara to become an independent people, Morocco militarily went in and invaded the area, claiming that it was part of its country. And this is where the problem started. And the people of the Western Sahara began to organize themselves against this annexation of their land against Morocco. And this conflict has been going on since that time.
So how is this a problem for all of Africa?
Well, the problem comes in for the rest of Africa because the conflict has the potential to spill over into other neighboring areas, Algeria, which is right there, that whole region. And another reason that it's a problem for Africa is because the people of the Western Sahara, which falls under the government names, the Sahrawi Arab Democratic Republic, they are counted as a member state of the African Union. And Morocco is also a member state of the African Union. And traditionally, when we talk about, annexation of land or occupation of land, we are talking about Western nations or foreign nations doing this to Africa. But in this case, we have two African members of the African Union, one colonizing the other. In fact, those who lift this issue called the Western Sahara the last colony of Africa.
Okay. And why does Morocco want Western Sahara?
Well, it's two things. You know, Morocco has a very interesting history. The Kingdom of Morocco, that analysts say historically they've always had this problem of expansionism. And they have claimed, whether it's true claims or not, they have claimed land as far away as parts of Algeria and even Mali, I think it was. And they, you know, so they have this problem of expansionism and claiming land that is not their own. But the other reason that you can, you know, they say follow the money. And when you follow the money, you know, you often will see why why there's conflict, why there's particular interest of one place to another. Well, in that region of the Western Sahara, you know, you have a phosphate, you know, this material, this natural material that makes soil. And you know, we believe as followers of the Honorable Elijah Muhammad, and we've been given this figure that the earth is 196,940,000 square miles, and the people of the earth have to eat. And as long as you have to eat, you have to have soil, you know. And
Right.
so this naturally is a multi-billion-dollar industry, the phosphate, you know, that makes the soil. So that's one of the reasons why. And also there is a multi-billion-dollar fishery business to be made in that area. And so they have resources there that Morocco would like to have control over. But others say that it's part of their age old, they call it the disease of expansionism.
Mhm. Now, what role, of course, is there always seems to be a role for us, but what role has the United States and the Biden administration played in this drama?
Well, you know, historically, the the United States did not really recognize Morocco's claim to that land that, you know, called the Western Sahara. And this has been like a unwritten rule among nations of the earth, you know, among the UN, among the African Union, among the nations of the earth took the position that you all took this land, you know, and we don't recognize your claim to it. And not that they've done anything about it, you know, but they took a hands-off position, you see. And
Mhm.
so in the waning days of the Trump administration, President Trump signed an executive order. It wasn't even by Congress, it was an executive order that the United States will now recognize Morocco's claim to that land. And by him doing that, it emboldened Morocco even more in this illegal act that has been going on again since 1975. Now, Biden, when President Biden was elected,
Mm.
being that this move by I almost said Reagan, but it's Trump.
Yes.
By Mr. Trump happened in the last days of his administration, activists and those who, again, are involved in the struggle for liberation and the struggle to free the Western Sahara from Morocco, they have been appealing to the Biden administration to reverse that decision that President Trump made.
Mm-hmm.
And he has not done so. He has not done so, and he has not made any moves. So it's like they are just stalling for time and not really involving themselves in fixing this problem. Now, I also want to add, when President Trump made his decision to do this, this brought in Israel as a factor.
Yes. Okay. Mm-hmm.
And it's important to understand that another move that President Trump made in the last days of his administration was he did what no other administration was really successfully able to do, which was to begin to bring and soften Arab, or have a document that Arab nations signed on, of normalization with the state of Israel.
Gotcha.
Because of the Palestinian situation, there was a running rule among Arab governments that we will not recognize Israel as a legitimate state. We will not, even though many of them, they said that on paper, but many of them have always done business and have always done things with Israel anyway.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
But what Trump was able to do was get them to sign a document called the Abraham Accords, of all things.
Okay.
And so he got Morocco to sign on to the Abraham Accords, which again was normalization with Israel. And the trade-off was that the United States will recognize the illegal claim of Morocco to the Western Sahara. And so it's been a problem. And they had hope in President Biden. They felt, he was this liberal man. He wants to be more inclusive on the world stage compared to Trump, who took an America alone position, America first, as he called it.
Mm-hmm.
And so this is what has happened. So right now, the people are very disappointed in President Biden and his administration, because not only did they not really lift a finger to reverse the policy, but now they're calling on the Western Sahara, the people of the Western Sahara, to enter into an agreement with Morocco where it will be a more compromised situation, which is what Morocco wants. They want everything except for the Western Saharan people to have self-determination and a nation of their own. Other than that, they're willing to tolerate or do whatever to try to get along, but without the Western Sahara becoming independent and self-sustaining, the people of the West Sahara is like saying, no, why should we have an arrangement like that? Mm-hmm. We will still be colonized and slaves, but with the few freedoms that Morocco still control, and that's unacceptable to them.
Right. Now, I'm still, I'll be looking to see how this plays out with the Biden administration and what interests the United States may have as this plays out in the future. One question I do have, Brother Brian, before I let you go is, has the U.S. cooperated with the United Nations this year?
Well, not really. I mean, the complication with the United Nations is that the United Nations did set up a mechanism for the vote, a vote to be taken for self-determination. In our teachings, as and I always speak from a standpoint of being a student of the Honorable Miss Louis Farrakhan and the teachings of the Honorable Elijah Muhammad, and we calling for a complete freedom, a full and complete freedom. And this is what the people of the Western Sahara is looking for, a full and complete freedom. And the United Nations did facilitate a vote or a referendum for the people of the Sahara, Western Sahara, to decide whether we will still be a part of Morocco or whether we will strike a move for self-determination and have our own nation. And Morocco has done things to stall that, to push that aside, to, prolong the situation. Everything but have that vote. And the United States, again, they have not really cooperated. I mean, they have not used their power to push their relationship with Morocco to stop the shenanigans against the Western Saharan people having their own. So that's why I was like, yes and no, because they tolerated the UN, but by them not lifting a finger. And now at this point, they are in cahoots with Morocco, and the UN is not really that strong. They're taking this very compromising position, which really hurts the people of the Western Sahara. So the United States, I mean, yes and no. They've done both. They've tolerated it, but they're not really serious about helping the situation of self-determination for the Western Saharan people.
Yes, or African people in general. Yes, sir.
Or African people in general. That's right. And that has to be understood, because right now there is so much going on that in Africa, you have these so-called terrorist groups. I say so-called, but these extremist groups that are rising up and spreading mayhem throughout Africa. And even in the Western Sahara, this conflict was exacerbated even more so when the United States, in conjunction with NATO and other countries, went in and overthrew and destroyed the government of Muammar Gaddafi and killed him. And that unleashed a lot of stuff across Africa, weapons and things that would not normally be throughout Africa. And now these things are beginning to haunt the West, you see? And so we can blame America. I mean, America has a lot of blood on its hands because of decisions that it's made, moves that it's made, that ultimately cause these other issues to be exacerbated. The Western Sahara is one. And now we see in East Africa, the bombing that just took place in Uganda last week. Ethiopia is at war, and America is at the center of exacerbating these things for a number of reasons, which I'm sure in maybe some subsequent broadcasts, we can talk more specific on. But America is terrible for the world.
Yes, sir. Brother Brian, you said it for me. I look forward to discussing more about this in subsequent broadcasts. But thank you for joining us today and providing your insight on what an issue that many of us really aren't even aware of that is so going on. So thank you, as always, for your commentary.
Thank you for having me once again, Sister Rosalind. Thank you.
Yes, sir. Thank you. Thank you for joining us today and tuning into National Network View News. Please share your thoughts with us in the comment section below. Follow us on social media at NNV News, and please subscribe to our YouTube channel, NNV News. This is Rosalind Parks with National Network View News. Good night.
Be a part of the force that powers truth in journalism. Go to nnvnews.com/donate.